Hello and welcome to Cargo Masterminds, our Monday episode of one-to-one interview, where we connect with the world's best cargo minds. My name is Reggie John. It has been a year since the World Health Organization officially declared COVID-19 as a pandemic, and life has not been same since then for all of us around the world. People and organizations changed quickly and adapted to a new lifestyle. While travel came to a standstill, moving goods and cargo was essential to keep the world alive. While passenger aviation has reduced to almost nothing, more planes were deployed to move cargo. Demand for cargo charters saw a rapid rise, and charter operators were busy and worked 24/7 to meet the demand for charter for PPE initially, and then to move all critical goods that did not have access to capacity because of the absence of passenger flights. Chapman Freeborn, established in 1973, has developed into one of the largest and best-known aircraft charter brokers. Over the last 48 years, Chapman Freeborn carefully created a position for itself as the leading air cargo charter solution provider in the world. Through carefully orchestrated acquisitions of key assets, Chapman Freeborn is a reliable partner for cargo charters in key industries that include oil and gas, animal transport, humanitarian, aerospace, automotive, and onboard courier. My guest today is a person who started his career in Chapman Freeborn as a trainee in 1987, and he has ascended to become the CEO of the company and now the chairman of the board at Chapman Freeborn Group. Under Russi Batliwala's leadership, Chapman Freeborn became a world leader in chartered brokering. I'm so happy to welcome Russi Batliwala, chairman of the board, Chapman Freeborn Group, to today's episode of Cargo Masterminds. Russi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Reggie. As you know, always a pleasure to see you and always a pleasure to work with StatTimes.
Okay, let's have a quick rewind to what happened in the last 1 year. I had an opportunity to talk to you on one of the webinars that we had organized that was way back in April 2020. Take us through cargo charter demand in the pandemic, initially for PPEs and now perhaps for vaccines. How do you look back in the last 1 year?
Well, that's a good question. Where do you start? Okay, so the last year has just been one big story from starting off a year ago in February or January of 2020. The whole industry was in a real downward spike. People were returning airplanes. We at Chapman and Magma actually returned a 747 to the lessor in February of last year, only to wish we would have it back in March and so on. From March, obviously, the year just continued to climb and climb with PPE, but not only PPE. I think the PPE phase was maybe 3 or 4 months, but generally the need for freighters has boomed in 2020 in all verticals, and we've obviously had a very, very good and very successful year with the freighters in general, with our own leased assets that we have, the 4 747s that are flying flat out for some of the major forwarders, but also for automotive freight movements in Europe. We have a couple of aircraft that specialize in automotive. They've been incredibly busy. But also our third-party chartering and our freighter chartering has been very strong and continues up to today as very, very, very strong.
Russi, how do you look at the demand and supply mismatch in air freight? Of course, we still have the passenger aviation very, very slow in terms of returning back to what we experienced before pandemic. So how do you look at and what is your evaluation of the mismatch in supply and demand?
Well, again, let's go back a year ago or 14 months ago. The freight business was dominated by bellies. And I think, what we've really seen is that as the bellies have gone, the demand is quite amazing how much demand there really is. Adding to that, let's not forget that, through the pandemic, the needs and requirements of e-commerce and, living in a house with three ladies, I know how often the doorbell rings and something's delivered far away. I think we've all seen that. So not only has the normal air freight that was previously in bellies now moved on to freighters, there's a big increase through e-commerce has come along as well, so that we're only seeing a boom, not because of a mismatch in terms of belly versus freighter, but we're now seeing an increase because of the e-commerce requirements. And moving on from PPE, PPE is still around. There is still a lot of gloves and masks, and now a huge amount of test kits being flown around. There's going to be a mismatch for a long time, in my opinion, at least for probably certainly until January, February of next year.
Russi, and you're happy with the charter business, and you're quite bullish about the cargo charter business.
I've been doing this for so long, Reggie, and I've been, I've seen the tsunamis, I've seen the earthquakes, I've seen the humanitarian disasters, and I've never seen anything like this. This is quite exceptional, and it's something that I hope for everybody's sake actually that we don't see it again. I'm kind of a bit tongue in cheek there, but as far as I'm concerned, this is a one-off situation. It's going to continue for another year. I then expect normality of some sort to come back in, and I hope that freighters will be, will have gone up in esteem by shippers and by people everywhere to see what they've actually been able to do in this time, and that people don't forget.
Russi, would you like to have a few more freighters in the Magma fleet now?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a great question. I mean, we are continuously looking for additional lift. But it's very funny, Reggie. There's just so many people out in the market, and people are, the 1 or 2 man organizations that are offering 747 freighters, and there's also, the emails that go out from some kind of scams offering aircraft. I mean, it's quite amazing how freighters and freight movement is so in these days. But quite literally, everybody is offering airplanes that don't exist, or that that are very. If you're serious about freighters, then you know exactly which aircraft, which MSN, you know exactly which aircraft is available or not available, and so on. So of course we'd like more aircraft, and our customers are demanding that we provide more aircraft, because also the same with Magma and the Air Atlanta fleet that we use, but everybody else has the same issues, that these aircraft need to go into maintenance. And they need to go into maintenance for quite some time. And when you're flying flat out and really working these aircraft, they need to be maintained. So taking an airplane out, you're always going to have a shortfall, and you need to replace it with something. So we're not different to anybody else. We're looking particularly to replace a downtime when we have aircraft in maintenance. But the market is there. We could definitely sell more than we're selling at the moment.
Are you seriously considering getting a few more of them, or on a lease?
Absolutely. Watch this space, Reggie. I can't say, but maybe we'll have some news soon.
And would that be on the same 747, or would you look at any other model as well?
Well, I think long term, our organization is the new mother company in particular is looking at all kinds of freighters, and they've started. There was recently a press release out with the SmartLinks, which is a sister company of ours, providing now a couple of aircraft, a couple of A321 freighters into DHL. There are 737 freighters that are in the group, and there are more to come. And they're definitely looking at all types of future conversions and new aircraft that will come into the market in maybe not next year, but in a couple of years.
Russi, just a quick comment on some of the recent trends in terms of Air Canada beginning to have their fleet of freighters, 767. LATAM converting 767 into freighters, CMA CGM predominantly and only a sea freight company starting a freighter operation A330. How do you look at these, and do you think these are for a short term, or for the next 2 years is good enough for these companies to kind of survive?
I think there's a lot of hype about air cargo at the moment. And I think, the rates are at a level where you can operate a medium-sized freighter, and I would say a 767 on the transatlantic, and you can do that at profitably. In normal times, I'm not sure you can actually do that. But certainly at the moment, yes, if you look at the figures and you try to operate a 767 on a transatlantic, it makes sense because the rates are so high. Now, whether those rates will be sustained going beyond maybe 2 years or 3 years, it's difficult for me to say. But then again, as e-commerce increases, there'll always be a requirement, and it probably will. But whether these incredible days and these highly profitable days as they are now for freighter operators will continue, I don't think so. I doubt it.
Russi, in terms of your revenue contribution of the cargo charter operation, and today's interviews, we are talking only about air cargo charters, not on the passenger side of the chartering business. What is the kind of revenue share from the cargo business, cargo charter business to the overall Chapman Freeborn group? And if you can divide that also into freighters or the passenger flights, which are only used for cargos.
I'm not going to be able to go into that much detail, Reggie, but what I can tell you is that, Chapman Freeborn has always been very strong in the cargo side of the business. And there's a good reason for that. In my previous role as CEO, and together with my colleague Shahi Azunian, we were both very cargo orientated, and the business has always been very cargo heavy in terms of revenues. Last year, our passenger business and our VIP jet business was, because of the pandemic and because of the lack of travel, obviously they did not perform to the levels that we would have expected them to. But that's obviously not through their own fault. That's just because the market was as it was. When it comes to cargo charter, Magma Aviation operates only charters, or predominantly only charters. They operate 1 or 2 routes where they are selling on a kilo type basis, but predominantly it's all charters. We sell charters, full charters to freight forwarders, and then our third party chartering is obviously what we call our core business. And adding to that, Intratco, which operates full charters in the animal sector. And then our onboard courier business, which is obviously it's not charters, but it's something similar. We have Arcus Air that operates full charters. So if I add all of those up together, we're probably last year at about 90% of our entire group's business was all focused on cargo charter, if not even more, maybe even 95%.
Coming to Russi, onto some of your key vertical businesses and the impact it had in the last 1 year because of the pandemic: oil and gas, automotive, aerospace, animal transport. Of course, we did see a number of freighters carrying from cows to pigs to maybe in the recent past, I think it's the horses. Have you seen the volumes getting back into the pre-pandemic, or are you still finding stress on some of these verticals?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't think we've seen a let up in any of the verticals. Certainly since March or April of last year, whether it's automotive, whether it's aerospace, whether it's animals, everything is up. And quite likely the reason we're seeing it is because, the charter broker, normally in this day and age, if a freight forwarder has a requirement, they'll go to an airline. It's only when the airline says no that they'll necessarily come to us. So if a scheduled operation or a scheduled solution is not available, then these requests come to us. So we've seen an increase, obviously, in all types of requests because of the lack of availability of the legacy carriers and some of the major freighter carriers. So from our perspective, everything is on and up. The animal transportation part in particular, there is some new legislation, or there's some new rulings on the transport of animals into China, which we've been involved with. There's in the humanitarian side has continued, and we've been very, very strong for us in the last year as well, which isn't always as simple, because with the lack of freighters, we're literally having to be very, very creative and come up with our solutions to finding out of, having to really think out of the box. How do we come up with a solution here, because there is limited to no freighter availability at all.
But did you have an impact on the onboard courier because of the lack of the passenger flights around?
Well, that's very interesting, Reggie, because last year, and I think about this time, our onboard courier business went from 100 to 0, and maybe not quite 0, but 10%. Since then, I'm happy to say it's gone right way back up again, and we're looking at new record levels of business in the onboard courier business. That's down to a couple of things. One, we have an absolutely brilliant team of people working in 3 centers around the world: Hong Kong, Los Angeles, and Cologne. So it's a true 24 service center. You know, you get a request, you get an answer within 10 minutes. We've got literally thousands of professional couriers that fly for us. And we've just been very, very innovative and very clever in how we've managed that business, and it's now paying off for us in a big way.
Russi, I think with the acquisition of Intradco being and becoming a part of Chapman Freeborn, I've seen a number of reports in terms of the amount that the volume of animal transport that has happened since then. How serious is this part of the business and the entire Chapman Freeborn group? And are there any specific focus on this particular segment?
Well, let me explain the following. You know, Reggie, our business is generally a niche business. So, you know, charter broking is something that, you know, if you're going to do it, you need to do it properly and you need to do it well. There are a lot of organizations that claim to be charter brokers, but, you know, it's not as simple as that. And, you know, you've got to be very clear about what you're doing. You've got to be very professional about it. You've got to understand the aviation world. So when you get involved then in animal transportation, you're putting on at least another 5 layers of complexity, specialized knowledge and niche. So, you know, you may think that, you know, you may see that there are, you know, quite a few charter brokers around, but charter brokers that specialize on animal transportation, they're even less. And so, you know, for us, our goal has always been to stay in profitable niche businesses, not the run-of-the-mill businesses where we are basically having to compete on a high level on a day-to-day basis. What we offer with companies such as Intradco is very, very specialized knowledge and experience and professionalism. And Intradco has, for example, its own stores. So it provides its own horse stores, provides its own cattle stores. And again, that is a real niche in this business.
You know, diversification of business at Chapman Freeborn Group and your strategic decision to kind of acquire assets. For example, Intradco itself is, you don't want to become just another cargo charter provider, but basically bring in domain expertise and knowledge. So tell us about the diversification of the business and some of the acquisitions that Chapman Freeborn made in the last few years, which are all been phenomenally well.
Yeah, I think Reggie, this is something that goes back about probably 10, 11, 12 years ago. You know, we were in a business that was changing rapidly, and we saw this change coming on to us, that, you know, the airlines were looking to work with the freight forwarders more. The freight forwarders were looking to work with the airlines more. And we were seeing ourselves in an industry, charter industry, that we were being squeezed more and more with new entrants into the business. You know, the entrance for a charter broker today is non-existent. If you have a fax, a mobile phone, and a bank account, you can be a charter broker. So, you know, at that time, we made the decision that, you know, we can't really continue this way. We need to control our own destiny going forward. Unfortunately, we were in the healthy financial position that we were able to diversify our business. And quite honestly, we were able to do that because of a lot of good relationships, and we were able to, for example, acquire Intradco Global because of a friendship between Chris Chapman at the time and Eddie McMullen, who was the owner of Intradco. So that's an example of how that actually came about. But since then, whether it's Magma, whether it's the onboard courier business, whether it's Arcus Air, whether it's businesses that we've sold, you know, it's all about trying to build a portfolio of business where we basically are purely non-reliant on our third-party broking business, and we've done that incredibly successfully, and I'm very proud of that. Because today we know at the beginning of the month that we can pay our bills at the end of the month. You know, when you rely only on third-party aircraft chartering, it's tough, and it can be tough unless you have your own assets. And, you know, we invested wisely. I believe we invested wisely. Magma Aviation, we invested in initially in 2016. increased the shareholding into 19 or two. I'm not sure which year, but we've now acquired the remaining share in Magna now that it's 100% organization owned by the Chapman Group. So we've done everything possible to get away from being just the third-party broker and now offer our own assets. And I think we're in a very strong position going forward. I mean, today I would probably say our core charter broking business maybe only accounts for 40–50% of our total global revenues, which is exactly what we wanted to achieve back 10–12 years ago.
Russi, a quick word on since you operate a lot of your cargo charters into Africa, and humanitarian logistics is a very key part of Chapman Freeborn. How do you look at the vaccine distribution and the early hype about the potential volume of vaccines being airlifted? How do you look at how things are actually now being carried on the planes?
Yeah, I have always been skeptical when someone talks about 8,000, was it 8,000 747s or whatever? I mean, I never believed this. And to this day, I'm not sure which airlines are really flying vaccines at any major level. Certainly the airlines that we work with on a regular basis, none of them are flying vaccines. There is still amount of PPE going around, and there is definitely test kits now being flown at an incredible level. But vaccines themselves, we're not seeing any of it, and I'd be surprised if any of my colleagues in the other broking businesses are seeing any of it either. I would have thought that maybe some of the very big integrators may be moving it, or some of the large freighter operators or legacy carriers may be moving it. But the charter business, I can quite clearly state we're not seeing any of the vaccines at the moment, at least not in any kind of big style.
Russi, on the acquisition by Avia Solutions in 2019, how has things changed for you and for Chapman Freeborn?
Well, yeah, good question. Avia Solutions Group is a fantastic fit for us as an organization. We see a lot of synergies. Albeit we are a standalone business, and the chairman and CEO wants to see us being successful, and we do everything we can to, as a standalone business, to be successful. But there are synergies, and certainly with the assets of the business of the larger group, that does give us some advantages going forward and gives us a bit more scope in what we can offer as a group. But I think the key word there, Reggie, is change. Change is probably my favorite word, but that's something personal. I need change to keep me motivated and to keep me creative. And a lot of people are scared of the word change. So when you suddenly, when you do declare that the business is now going to be owned by someone else, everybody's, a lot of people are worried or concerned because change does scare people. But I think certainly in the case of ASG and Chapman Freeborn, there is no need for anybody to be scared. And I think so far we've only been going for about 18 months now, but we're doing very well. And as I said, the cultures are similar. The CEO and chairman is very, very hands-on, very, very demanding. But that's that's fine. That's what a shareholder should be. So we're going in the right direction, and we had a record year last year, and by the look of it, we're going to have a record year this year again.
You like change, Russi, but you have been with this company for 34 years. You didn't think of changing your organization. Just a few reflections on your life at Chapman Freeborn for the last 34 years.
Well, Reggie, I left school at the age of 16, so I'm now working. This is my 41st year of working, and I was telling this to someone recently. There's a couple of reasons why I'm still where I am, and number one is the charter business is just basically, it's fantastic. No 2 days are ever the same, and I can honestly say that after 34 years now with Chapman Freeborn. It is always something different, and there's always a different situation, and that change is what keeps me motivated, keeps me interested, and keeps me creative and wanting to continue to succeed. And the other reason why I'm still here, Reggie, is because nobody else ever offered me a job.
Okay, that's good. Russi, how has your role changed? And now you're the chairman of the board at Chapman Freeborn. How actively you get involved in the daily operations of the company?
Well, that's a very good question, Reggie. I've been thinking about it. My tagline on my emails, it says Russi Batliwala, chairman of the group. I'm thinking about changing that to chairman and charter broker, because for various reasons, I'm still involved in certain day-to-day business, and I'm quite involved in charters, as I'm sure some of my suppliers and colleagues will know. So, to be honest with you, not a lot has changed. But I have a new great CEO, Eric Erbacher, who I'm here to mentor and to help with this big organization. And I probably have a little bit more freedom than I had in the past to do other things and to see other things. One of my big goals and plans was really to do mergers and acquisitions, and it's now the time. It's probably not quite the time now because of the pandemic for me to be out and about and looking at acquisitions. And I've probably also looked at various parts of our business and thought, maybe an acquisition isn't the right thing. Maybe we really need to invest more and go organically to grow various businesses. So having that time now is enabling me to probably see things a little bit differently. Instead of just acquire. Maybe we need to invest and go the organic route. But I have the time now, or let's say I have a little bit more time. So let's see.
But Russi, you have anything specific in mind in terms of where you want to invest, or even in terms of an acquisition? What would be the area of the companies where you would want to acquire?
Well, I think there's a couple of areas. Certainly the animal transportation business. We believe that there's an opportunity to scale up there. It's very fragmented, the business, the industry as a whole. Pulling it together would probably make a lot of sense. So that would be one area. Maybe in the passenger field as well, in the passenger commercial field, leasing area, that there's opportunities there either to grow organically or to look at acquisitions. But we're kind of reflecting on everything at the moment, Reggie. And I think once the pandemic is over, hopefully soon, I'll have a clearer vision of where we're going.
Russi, my last question is that I just want to go back to something that you said. There's a lot of hype about air cargo. When you look at the air cargo industry in general, what is normal and what is abnormal that you observe of this industry?
Well, I think what is abnormal is the fact that we're living in a world still of freighters and passenger aircraft flying cargo. I said a year ago, this isn't going to last. I was wrong. It's still lasting, and it's still it's quite amazing to what level passenger aircraft are being used. We've been operating flights from Vietnam into the USA with passenger freighters. We're operating China, Europe, and all kinds of routes. And the aircraft I was very much of the opinion that this isn't going to last for more than a couple of months. And here we are in March of 2021, and we're booking through into April and beyond. And it's interesting. I think one of the funnier things that came up the other day is, one of the national carriers, one that's very close to my head office, to my office in Frankfurt, I won't name the name, recently objected to a charter flight with an A340 passenger aircraft. So they objected to a cargo flight, saying that they can operate this flight with an A340 passenger flight. Now, that is absolutely amazing. Who would have thought in this day and age that we'd ever get to the stage where an airline would object to a freight flight being flown with a passenger aircraft? So I think that kind of describes to you where we are at the moment in terms of the industry. That who knows what's going to happen tomorrow. Obviously, we are looking at passenger aircraft coming back, long haul aircraft coming back. But the Praters are going to be around for a bit longer, I think. And I think, all in all, the business, the industry is done so well. My only concern and my only hope is that people will remember that, a lot of the freight forwarders that are now utilizing own control capacity, they are doing that because they just can't rely on the large operators to move their freight at agreed rates and so on. So that's why more and more are moving on to own control capacity. And therefore, they decide what goes on an airplane and what doesn't. And I hope that a lot of the big shippers out there will recognize that in the future when, potentially some of the legacy operator will start operating again and start looking for cargo. I hope that the big forwarders who are controlling that or have their own control capacity now will continue to do so.
Russi, it was an absolute delight talking to you, and thanks for making time for us and talking about Chapman Freeborn and the industry in general.
You're very welcome, Reggie, and I wish you all a nice evening in Mumbai, and all the best, and speak to you soon.
That was Russi Batliwala, Chairman of the Board, Chapman Freeborn Group, joining us in Cargo Masterminds. Join me next Monday as I get talking to another global air cargo leader. Till then, take care, stay safe. Thanks for watching.